You want to explain the new system, the recording and everything?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Once again, a few issues with Blackboard, but I think we're overcoming them. We have, as you've seen from the email, recorded the last session, and we are recording this session. And hopefully, you all received a link to view as a catch-up the lecture from last week via email on YouTube. Can you give us a smiley face if you managed to reach the YouTube site and actually see the video? Good, you all saw it. Once again, as I say, tonight's lecture will be recorded. We are doing this to allow for any breaks in transmission due to Blackboard, due to internet connection failure, due to act of God. So again, within 24 hours, you will have a new link for today's session, just in case you miss any of it. The professor will continue to answer you via email, and you have his Skype address as well. Can we try and keep any interaction to a minimum? And I think that's it for the moment.
All right, thank you very much, Emma. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to class. As I mentioned in my email that I sent to all of you about today's class, we're going to start with questions that were asked by the students. And after last week's session, one obvious question that was asked by several people is, what is the final exam going to be like and what will it cover? Which I'm very happy to address. The exam itself, as I mentioned in a previous email to you, will go out on Sunday, next Sunday, so that you will have time to look at it and email me any questions that you have about it prior to class next Monday. And then I can answer them during class, and hopefully everybody will be completely clear as to what's required, particularly in terms of the wording of the questions. The form of the exam will be very simple. You will be asked to respond to 1 out of 2 questions. Please note, 1 out of 2 questions. Do not answer both questions for the simple reason that it will be a waste of your time. It will not be a waste of my time because I will only read 1 answer and base the grade on that question. So don't think you're going to get any kind of extra credit for answering both questions. You will not. They're both, of course, essay questions. This is a take-home exam. You are welcome to consult the texts. You're welcome to consult your class notes. You're welcome to consult your classmates. You're welcome to consult other readings. I am interested in your ability to think, your ability to reason on economic subjects, to the extent that this course has been able to introduce you to economic reasoning. As to what it will cover, as I think I already mentioned last week, the topic of the first lecture will not, in fact, be any part of the final exam, which will be strictly on economics and will cover those aspects of economics that we have discussed in class, the productive process, exchange, supply and demand, the theory of the firm, money and banking, the financial system, and international economics, international trade, international finance and investment. And I will not be asking you a question about economic statecraft. I will touch upon the subject next week in our final session, but it will not be included in the final exam because there is, of course, an entire course also given by me on the subject of economic statecraft, which will be given in the spring semester. Okay, that I think covers the question of the exam. You can, of course, if you have further questions, email me and I'll be happy to respond to them. And if they seem to me of general interest, I will forward it on to everybody in the class and answer to everyone. Another question that was asked by a student, which struck me as being of general interest, was the question, in terms of cost-benefit analysis, which is one of the things we covered last week. Does economic theory only concern itself with economic, and more specifically financial, costs and financial benefits? The answer to that question is yes and no. In terms of the theory of economic exchanges and cost-benefit analysis, it is the economic or financial cost and the economic or financial benefit that is concerned. We all know, however, that in actual practice, human beings have many other motivations above and beyond the economic motivations. For example, in terms of cost, a particular course of action may cost in economic terms, in financial terms, very little. It may cost a great deal in terms of time. It may cost a great deal in terms of energy expended on it. It may cost a great deal in terms of interpersonal relations. It may cost much more in terms of the emotional well-being of the person taking the action. These are all matters that need and are taken into account by human beings who are engaged in cost-benefit analysis with reference to a course of actions. The same thing, of course, is true of benefits. Obviously, one matter that is going to be taken into consideration in terms of cost-benefit analysis is the benefit in economic or financial terms. But one might also take into consideration, and ordinarily would take into consideration, the benefits in terms of, for example, physical health, the benefits in terms of energy conservation, the benefits in terms of the amount of time that isn't going to have to be spent on that particular subject in future if this course of action is successful. That the benefit in terms of improved interpersonal relations with family, with friends, with relatives, with others in general. The benefits in terms of psychological satisfaction, emotional improvement, and the like. In other words, it is not just with reference to economic costs and economic benefits. What also has to be taken into consideration, and is taken into consideration by all human beings who take actions that involve other human beings, of the psychological nature, a social nature, a physical nature, and a political nature. A particular action, for example, may increase your wealth, but decrease your power. It may have the opposite effect. It may decrease your wealth, but increase your power. For example, you may take an action, the cost of which is high, which will decrease your wealth. The economic cost, the financial cost is high, will decrease, obviously, your wealth, but may have an important effect on your influence on other people and your power to cause them to take actions to further your goals, the things that you are trying to achieve in future. So the answer is yes and no. In terms of a very strict theoretical approach to cost-benefit analysis, we are indeed talking about economic or financial costs and economic or financial benefits. In terms of what really happens in 99% of the cases, these other elements or some of these other elements are almost always involved. So the answer there, of course, is no. The analysis of cost, the analysis of benefit will include some or all of these other factors. Okay. Another question. And this is an interesting one and difficult to answer. Since, according to what was analyzed last week on a supply and demand basis, both price controls and subsidies lead to unfortunate, negative economic effects for society as a whole. That being the case, why do governments engage in these activities? Okay. That's a very interesting question. The answer to it should occupy actually the whole rest of the time today, but we obviously can't do that. It is part of the basis of public choice analysis, which is one of the relatively recent schools of economic thought. And basically, the answer lies in two areas. One is that these, particularly in the case of price controls, the establishment of price controls on a product that is in short supply would appear to be a popular measure, would appear to be something that would benefit the people, the public in general. In fact, as we discovered last week, it does nothing of the kind, but that is the way it's going to be presented by the politicians who put it into effect. So, at least in the short term, until people realize that they've been had, the politicians are going to get political benefit from establishing price controls. In the case of price controls and in the case of subsidies, you also have another situation, and that is both of these, and particularly subsidies, are in effect Shimon, I've gone off.
No, you're still there.
Okay.
Smiley faces, everybody, please. Could everybody please do a smiley face so we know that you're there and you can hear us? Yeah, they're there.
Okay,
Thank
fine.
you.
Thank you very much. For a time there, I appeared to be frozen on the screen, so I assumed that in fact there was something wrong. Certain elements in society are benefited. Obviously, the people or the groups that receive the subsidies are benefited by them at the cost of the rest of society. However, those groups tend to be fairly small, and each member of the group, or each, whether individuals or organizations, each member of the group that benefits has a relatively high financial benefit. The rest of society, which is the vast majority, the cost to each one of those people is very small. Therefore, the people who benefit take much more direct action in order to maintain their subsidies than the people who are hurt by it, which is the rest of society. And since the people who benefit are able to reward the politicians who have imposed the subsidies by donating to their political campaigns or in other ways of supporting them in the states and regions and cities in which they exist. A positive reinforcement loop is created whereby the people subsidized reward the politicians then reward the people subsidized by maintaining or increasing the subsidies and by opposing those politicians who want to eliminate or reduce the subsidies. So that is the other reason, and the same thing is true to a lesser extent with reference to price controls, which benefit only those people who are able, in fact, to get the product at the controlled price, which is a minority of the people who want the product, as we've seen, because it will create a shortage. But those people will be benefited at the cost of the rest of society. But it's much more important in the case of subsidies, because of the intensity, the political intensity that is created in terms of the small group, or the relatively small group, that is receiving the subsidies compared to the fairly minor cost to the public as a whole, and therefore the fact that they are less likely to band together to take political action to try to eliminate these subsidies. A perfect example, of course, are the farm subsidies in the United States, which benefit a part of 2% of the population. Now, if you include the suppliers of farm equipment and fertilizer and so on and so forth, you're talking about maybe 5% of the population has some involvement in the actual production of foodstuffs as opposed to its transportation, its processing, its wholesaling, its retailing, its sale, so on and so forth. Nevertheless, that very small percentage of the population feels very strongly about subsidies, wants them kept and hopefully increased, and the additional cost to the individual member of the public in terms of the food that he or she buys in the supermarket is fairly minor. And therefore, the fact that the farmers and the suppliers of the farmers exist very largely in states that have small populations, but 2 members of the Senate, as we mentioned last time, means that, in effect, it is politically almost impossible it has proven impossible to eliminate price controls, to eliminate subsidies in the agricultural sector in the United States. And it has even proven very difficult to reduce them, although that has happened on occasion. The same thing is true in Europe. Right now, the European countries are engaged in tremendous conflict among each other with reference to those countries that supply resources to the European Union and those countries that gain resources from the European Union. In other words, the donors versus those who receive. And among those who receive are farmers, because the farm subsidies in Europe are even more extensive and more expensive than the farm subsidies in the United States. But again, because, for example, the farm constituency is very powerful in France, but not powerful in Germany, France will veto any effort on the part of Germany and its allies to reduce or eliminate these subsidies. And, of course, France has its allies also, Italy, Spain, and others. And so the farm subsidies in Europe stay on. Okay. Again, after today's class session, please send me your questions and comments by email, and I will respond to you directly, individually. And if it seems to me a question of general interest for the class, I will address those questions and comments next week in the regular class session. All right, we are now going to take up the subject of what is usually called in the university economics departments money and banking. That is, money as a phenomenon and the financial system. The first money was minted in one of the Greek city-states in the 7th century of the BCE, before the Common Era. And this was in the form of coins. And for centuries thereafter, money meant coins. Now, these coins tended to be of 3 metals, made from 3 metals, based upon their relative scarcity and other factors which we will discuss. The more valuable coins were made out of gold, the intermediate coins were made out of silver, and the lowest value coins were made out of copper. Now, you may notice, if you look into your pocket, that the penny is still made out of copper, the American penny. The intermediate coins are all of a silver color, although they are not silver. And the dollar coin, which you probably won't find in your pocket because Americans, for some reason, won't use dollar coins, is given a gold color, although I can assure you it is not gold, but it's given a gold color. So this, coming from the 7th century BCE to 2012 CE, the Common Era, it hasn't changed. Human reaction to the color of the money in terms of coinage has not changed. Gold, silver, copper. Now, there are other reasons why gold has been prized as a monetary unit for forever, since the beginning of the monetary system. That is, it does not tarnish. For example, if you make a coin out of iron, it will rust. It doesn't tarnish. There is a relatively small quantity in the world. The gold that was mined 2,000 years ago probably still exists somewhere today, either in the form of a coin or or more likely a form of jewelry. As a result, it maintains its value much better than any other form of metal or obviously paper, but we'll get in that in a moment. Silver does tarnish. Copper does tarnish. If you add some things to silver, it won't tarnish. That's what sterling silver is. But pure silver does tarnish, and it's available in greater quantities than gold, and therefore it has lesser value than gold. Copper is available in larger quantities than silver, and therefore it has less value than silver in terms of all other things being equal, which is that its equal weight of copper is worth less than the same weight of silver, which is worth less than the same weight of gold. Now, very soon, the issuers of coinage, the issuers of coins, discovered 2 things. One is that coins were, unless they were stamped with something, were easy to counterfeit. So they started putting symbols on the coins. They would put a tree on one side, they would put the bust of the ruler on the other side, they would put some kind of legend, Alexander I, king of whatever, and some kind of legend on the back, and they would be stamped by the government and issued by the government.